what is the defenseman compass, and where do these Sharks defensemen sit among that compass? Corey Sznajder, aka Shutdown Line, joins the show where we talk about his tracking of defensemen, what type of defensemen there are out there, and how the defensive room has changed, especially with Erik Karlsson leaving. And then we also talk about who's going to be the transition player for the Sharks, or transition players for the Sharks, as with Erik Karlsson gone now, who can be the guy to get the puck out of their own zone and into the offensive zone, and why it might be a slog for the Sharks in that department this year. So all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Sharks.
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, contributor at Inside the Rink, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proud to be a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day, and we're going to be back to 5 episodes a week starting September 18th, so mark your calendars. If you want to be an everydayer, all you got to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, and of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Corey Sznajder joins where we talk about a bunch of kind of defensemen, and how teams utilize their defensemen and who's really good at getting the puck out of the zone, Erik Karlsson, and kind of how players are like Mario Ferraro are used to kind of stop guys from coming in the zone, and where the Sharks players kind of sit in his compass. And then we get into the transition game for the Sharks and why it's going to be, there's a lot of questions in that area. So before we do that, do want to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you guys by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or enter the promo code LockedOnNHL for a free water bottle with any order. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. And now we bring on Corey Sznajder, a.k.a. Shutdown Line. You guys know him on Twitter. He has all the fancy graphs. Corey, how's it going, buddy?
I'm doing well. Just winding down the last weeks of summer here.
I know it is almost here again. The chaos is about ready to start. So I can't believe, summer's just about done. So wanted to bring you on because you wrote a really awesome article about defensemen and where they kind of fit in, aka the Defenseman Compass. So I know you did one on forwards, but wanted to discuss what yours on defensemen, especially because the Sharks have a lot of questions without Erik Karlsson. So let's start. What is the Defenseman Compass?
So it kind of goes back to what I do with the AllThreeZones project, which is tracking zone entries, zone exits, transition play, puck retrieval, zone entry defense. And I wanted to take all of these stats and kind of create like player types or player archetypes with them. And it kind of went back to me boiling down to which skills can defensemen control the most outside of like team effects. Because like with zone exits and exiting the zone with possession and things like that, that's a lot more team dependent sometimes, because like you have to have guys have to be open. You can't be constantly under duress. You can't have a bad scheme, bad forwards you're playing behind. And with zone entry defense, that could also be a little scheme driven. Like if you're a team that plays very slop in the offensive zone, you're going to give up more rushes. If you're a team that's bad at exiting the zone with control, you're going to give up more rushes. You're going to have to back off of the line more. So I was looking for which skills are the most individually driven for defensemen. And what I found was which ones are the most repeatable year over year, to be specific. So I was looking for defensemen I was looking for which stats stayed the same over like the 5-year sample that I've tracked with these microstats. And I especially tried to hone in on players that switch teams to see which players had the most consistent stats. And the most consistent stats I found were carrying the puck out of the zone and carrying the puck into the zone, creating chances off zone entries, defending scoring chances off carry-ins. And those were the stats I kind of built off of from there. And I created like basically just created like a compass meme sort of thing. It's not perfect, it's not rigid by any means, but it kind of breaks down players into playing styles. And what I found was defensemen that are very good at carrying the puck, it's more of an individual skill, and they tend to have the most kind of boomer bust results. And they drive offense a lot more, and they tend to have a lot more high end results than a defenseman that is more focused on defending his blue line, retrieving the puck, cleaning up messes in their own zone. Those are more malleable, like within the system. So, and the compass itself, on the right side of the charts, were defensemen that like to carry the puck. And I think I put those in the category called movers and rushers.
Yeah.
And on the other end is called clearers. So guys that just clear the puck out of the zone. They're not looking to make the high risk plays. They're not going to skate it out of pressure if they don't have to. And on the other side, the top of the chart are called stoppers, which are players that are good at entry defense. The other end of that is a category I called retrievers, which are guys that they retrieve dump-ins in the defensive zone, take a lot of hits, basically guys that start exits, but they're a lot more.
They rely on somebody else to kind of do the dirty work for it.
Right. So in the bottom right side of the charts, you have guys that retrieve the puck a lot and move the puck. So that's the guys you kind of look for because they can do everything. And on the top right of the chart are guys who can stop the play and move the play. So that's where like Cale Makar and Adam Fox would be.
Yep.
And on the bottom right is where like your Erik Karlssons and Roman Josis, Quinn Hughes, those types of players are. So like those are your high end player guys that you're looking for. And on the left side are the safe players that you can kind of like fill your roster out with. And you can get them anywhere from like 2 million or $5 million. It really just depends how many minutes they can play. But it's basically building them into different archetypes and kind of going from there. And I tried to do it the best I could with the stats that I tracked. It's not perfect, but I feel like I got it a good starting point into like what we can something that we can project defensemen with.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like what really stood out to me was like seeing Erik Karlsson just all alone kind of by himself on one of your charts, when it was looking at the defensive zone entries and puck carrying, right? And we'll get into what this him leaving, what this means for the Sharks here in a little bit, but like just how important was Erik Karlsson to the Sharks last year with numbers like that, where he is kind of doing everything to start and generate the offense for the 2022-2023 Sharks, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the stats they weren't as good as they were last year. Like that was off the page good, but like he's always had that ability in him. It's just like his entry defense kind of went down the toilet for a couple of years with injuries, and they weren't scoring as many goals off like the passes he was making. But he was probably the closest thing to a one-man team that's really that I've seen like in this whole modern era, just because like everything really kind of went through him. Anything the Sharks had wanted to do offensively went through him. He started the plays, he kept plays going, even if he's not getting points off of them. He's the catalyst for everything. And it has these guys have a chain effect too, because like when they get off the ice, most of the time they're in the offensive zone. So it makes it easier for the next group of forwards, the next group of defensemen to come on the ice too. So like it's interesting because like these puck rushing defensemen like Carlson, Josi, Dahlin, Shabbat, like what I call them was they're not everybody's idea of the perfect defenseman because they're high risk players. They like the puck on their stick a lot. They like everything going through them. So like mistakes are going to happen. And they're not going to have the greatest defensive highlights in the world, but what you get from them is a lot more than what you give up. And what Carlson did, it's interesting, like him and the year before, Roman Josi had a very similar season with just how much impact he was making offensively and how much Nashville was scoring when the puck went through him.
Yep.
And Carlson kind of had that going for him last year.
All right, guys, before we finish up with Corey, we talk about where the Sharks defensemen kind of sit and why they all kind of sit in the left side of the compass. And then we get into the transition game for the Sharks. Do need to take a quick break. Talk to you guys about our good friends over at Birddogs. And if you're like me, right, your weekends usually pretty crazy, especially with school going on now. You got to run around. There's sporting events you're going to. You got to run around and get a bunch of stuff for school supplies. Maybe you got to go grocery shopping. You're cooking out on the weekend, trying to enjoy the last few weekends where the weather is really nice before winter gets here. You're gonna need some Birddogs to cover you, because not only do Birddogs feel great, they fit great, but they go with any occasion, right? Man, the built-in underwear, very skeptical at first, but life-changing because it keeps you cool, keeps things from getting all kind of bunched up and so right now, you're going to want to go check out a pair of Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or use the promo code LockedOnNHL. Get a free water bottle with any purchase. Again, birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL or use the promo code LockedOnNHL. Get a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. Yeah, I mean, I've always said it. Defense is for nerds. Go find a guy who can score you 100 points, right? The best way to play defense is to not have to play defense. Go keep it in your own zone, and that's what Erik Karlsson did for the Sharks last season. Of course, Erik Karlsson was traded this offseason to the Penguins. So really quickly, I mean, what do you think Carlson's impact will be with the Penguins? I know we can't expect the same prolific offense, but for a team that's looking to kind of make that final cup run with this core, do you think he can kind of, even if it's 80% of what he did last year, but on a much better team, be maybe more efficient, I guess would be the best term?
Yeah, I think he's in a good place to succeed there, just because Pittsburgh has a couple of defensemen that could be kind of the steady guy next to him. Like with San Jose, they had basically
Scott Harrington, baby.
Anybody with a pulse play next to him, but they have a lot of guys that can play like the simple role, like a Marcus Pettersson, Ryan Graves, who can just kind of be there to be the outlet or take a hit so Carlson can get up in the play. So I think it's set up well, and I really just want to see if their power play is going to be as trash as it's been in previous years, because it seems like they don't really have an excuse now.
All right, so that, I think that leads to the big question for the Sharks is kind of where on your, plots and outlines, where did a lot of the Sharks defensemen, I know in your kind of meme graph, you had Mario Ferraro in the upper left-hand corner, which is the, good at kind of stopping things at the blue line. So, you have guys like Vlasic, Šimik, you have Burrows, who all kind of feel very kind of defensive defensemen. Is this a lot of staying on the left-hand side? We're going to take a hit to make a play and hope somebody else does the dirty work?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how a guy like Ferraro does, especially, or even Radim Šimik. Šimik is a guy who actually has pretty good puck carrying stats through the all-three-zone stats that I track. Like, he has a couple of seasons with some very high carrying rates, including last year. And I actually watched a couple of a couple of clips from Sharks games just to see refresh my memory on how he plays and all that. But he's actually he has very good footwork. He's a very good passer. Played his offside last year. Not easy to do, especially in a depth role. So I think he's somebody that can potentially be like their puck transporter from the blue line if they want anybody, or if they just want everybody to stay back and play a simple role. That could work too. It's they're going to be that kind of season. But Ferraro's a guy I'm kind of interested to see how he does, because somebody's got to play those minutes. Somebody's got to play in the power play. And no matter how bad a team's power play is, somebody is going to get points. And Ferraro, he's a good skater. You can kind of mold him into whatever role you want to play. It's just a matter of how efficient or how good he's going to be there. But as far as a guy who can carry the puck and maybe rack up some points, I think he might be able to do it. But I mean, if I were them, I would just see if one of their prospects could potentially do it. So I was thinking actually maybe if any team is going to play a forward at the blue line, they're a good candidate too. Them or Dallas, honestly.
Yeah. I've especially when it comes to the power play, I'm all for just the 5-forward chaos theory. The Barracuda did it for stretches last year. And this team's gonna be the worst team in the NHL, or one of the worst teams in the NHL. Let's have some fun. Let's see the 5-forward power play unit. But it's interesting with Šimik, right? Because he's a guy going into the season who's going to be fighting for a job. And he has had some concussion issues the past couple seasons. I think he had 2 concussions last year, came back too quickly, self-admittedly came back too quickly from his first one. And that's kind of been the story with Šimik, is when he's out there, he's an impact, but he just can't stay healthy these past couple of years. So, and with Ferraro for me has been so frustrating, because he, like, watching him as a rookie, and you're like, okay, I can see something, right? And then the past couple of years, you just waiting for him to take that next step. And it might be he's been put in tough situations where he's had to kind of maybe play up up higher than he needs to. A couple of years ago, where it was just him and Burns were out there for half the night, it felt like, and just unfortunately just stuck out there because this team has been garbage at getting the puck out of their own zone without Erik Karlsson. And I worry that we're going to just see more of that from Ferraro. And the poor guy's already been playing 1 million minutes. He's only 24 or 25, and it feels like he might just get burnt out before he's 27 and just fall off a cliff. Is that something that could be a big worry, right?
Yeah, that's something that does happen to a lot of pretty talented defensemen. They get put into a role that maybe they're not suited for that early on a bad team, and they're just in quicksand the entire time. And I think that kind of it develops bad habits. I mean, not even necessarily bad habits. It's just what they got to do to survive a shift.
Yep.
And they're sending the puck off the glass a lot. They kind of have cold feet when it comes to like moving the puck. They take so many hits, and I think that's definitely something that could happen, especially on what's probably going to be a very bad Sharks team next year. But like I said, as far as like somebody has to fill this kind of role, I think he has a skill set to do it, but I don't know if they're going to put him into that skill set. But I'm also looking at this roster, and it's like,
it's bad.
Like Matthew Benning is in the same class, and that's the guy who was a third, like he was a good puck moving defenseman at Edmonton, and he got pigeonholed into that just play the simple game role. I don't know what Marc-Edouard Vlasic has left. John Ruda, simple defenseman. Kyle Burrows, just a
simple defenseman.
7-8 defenseman. Played a lot of minutes in Vancouver. But like, I mean, a few of these guys are actually like decent puck movers. Just they're all third pairing like press box guys. That's the problem. So, but one guy that I've always kind of been intrigued in is Jacob McDonald. And this is very out of left field, but like, so a couple years ago in Colorado, he had to play top pairing minutes because like half the team had COVID, and he dominated in those minutes. He was very good, like as a mobile defenseman, as like a guy who could complement the forwards in the offensive zone. But the 2021 Avs are kind of the biggest outlier team I've ever seen in my life. Like, I don't know if it's because of like the schedule where they were playing the same teams over and over, or if they just had like a nuked roster, but they constantly were playing downhill, skating downhill, and it was like the easiest life in the world for defensemen. But McDonald was a guy who kind of thrived in that system, and then next year he played 8 games. So and like going through his numbers, he's never been able to put up points in the NHL despite doing pretty well in his role, honestly. He's 30 years old. I don't know if there's anything else there, but we'll see. Like, it's the year to try guys out, but I don't know if like testing out the 30-year-old journeyman is going to be high on their priorities over somebody like I'm really bad like with prospects, but
no, I think like the one intriguing guy that they signed or they traded for is Leon Gavanke, who was a Winnipeg prospect, is put up really good numbers in the AHL, but hasn't gotten a chance to crack the lineup. And yes, there's like 1,000 defensemen in front of him, but he could be a potential guy while they're kind of waiting for Shakir Mukhamadullin. They acquired the Timo Meier trade last spring to kind of continue cook in the AHL. But I think Gavanke is going to be a potential guy there. But again, it's like, I think he has to jump a lot of people right now. And it could be by Thanksgiving when the Sharks have won like 3 games and it's ready to, like start throwing some of these young guys in the lineup that we could see him. But he's a guy I'm kind of keeping an eye on for at some point to get at least gets a decent run with the Sharks this year. So, all right, guys, before we finish up with Corey, we chat about the transition game for the Sharks and why it's probably going to lean on the forwards a lot and why that's going to make it for a long season for the Sharks forwards. Do want to, again, thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Probably a part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. And again, we'll be back to 5 episodes a week starting September 18th. But before then, though, we're going to have our State of the Franchise with the Ducks coming out tomorrow. So we're going to be talking about as they're shifting out of their rebuild and hopefully, at least hopefully for them, become a fun and frisky team. And, of course, we talk about the Carlson pick. We talk about a bunch of good stuff. So make sure you guys are following wherever you get podcasts. And, of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Who's going to move the puck out of the zone, right? You talked about all these guys. Is this going to probably come down to the forwards? A guy like Alexander Barabanov, who I think kind of had pretty solid transition numbers for the Sharks last year. At least it seemed like it, right? Especially playing with Couture. I think he really helped kind of Couture find his game because Couture didn't have to do that transition game. It let Barabanov kind of do it. And then Couture can kind of set up shot in front of the net where he's, pretty decent at that spot. Is it going to be like Couture's and William Eklund, who's been a transition monster in the AHL? Is it going to be these guys who are going to have to carry the load and kind of start the offense for the Sharks?
Yeah, it might have to be. I know the Winnipeg Jets under Maurice, they had their defensemen play a very minimalistic role. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of pressure on Scheifele and their forwards to get the puck out of the zone. I think this is going to have to be a similar type of thing. And it's a taxing way to play for a forward is the only problem. So I guess the only concern is you're running your guys ragged out there, and it's going to be a lot of one and done offense. When you get rush chances, you're hoping you're going to score off of them because these guys are going to burn up so much energy in the defensive zone. But I mean, this is something that a lot of teams have kind of caught. They've caught fire with it before in previous years. So I'm kind of interested to see how it goes. Just because teams go on run. I don't know. Some really bad teams on paper go on runs and the first 2 months of the season just from unsustainable play when they score off the rush all the time. And I don't know. San Jose's got an intriguing forward corp. So I think that's kind of what the high point is when you look at the roster from this year, but the forwards are definitely going to have to do a lot of help. Meyer had to do a lot of that in the defensive zone last year. I feel like every time I was watching the Sharks, he's stuck on the wall, just digging a puck out. Hurdles also. Yep. But Hurdle's very good at doing that, kind of playing that third defenseman back there. So it's basically going to be how are they going to survive this season, and just make sure they're developing their guys at this point. So we'll see. But I don't know. I'm also if they had a young kid on the defense, it'd be one thing, but these are veterans who can kind of handle just these grind type of games if they have to. Whereas if one of their top prospects was up there, it'd be totally different. But the grip they have now, it's kind of what's the worst that can happen if we throw Vlasic and Jan Ruda into the Wolves? Yeah, we'll lose, but
man, do not. I have a bad feeling for our good friends Blackwood and Capo Kakinen this year. It is going to be brutal for them this year, just because of that, right? Just that inability, I think, to create transition, sustainable offense by getting the puck out of the zone and then actually keeping it in the zone, Erik Karlsson, like you said earlier. Erik Karlsson just kind of setting you up for success, at least the next shift for success. And it feels like it's going to be a lot of you get the puck out and then you're going to dump in, you got to get a line change, and then you're going to basically just kind of repeat this cycle for the Sharks for 60 minutes, right?
Right. This is what I remember from David Quinn too, is he was also a very kind of quick strike off the rush type of teams that he had in the with the Rangers. But he also had Panarin and Zibanejad, but that it's kind of easy to create quick strike goals like that. But I don't know, the Sharks forward core, like I said, it's not it's not terrible. Like Duclair,
you can kind of squint a little bit and be like, okay, I can kind of see a little bit. Yeah.
There's a few guys that have kind of been like under the radar players for me, like Anthony Duclair for years before he finally broke out in Florida, 30-goal season. So I'm interested to see how he does. Like, but Barabanov's another guy who's kind of done really well in the stats I track too. Hurdle's always been good. Granlund's always graded well as a passer, despite not really being good at anything else. Like he racks up assists. And Zadina's kind of guy it's like he might break out, but he needs to figure out how to score goals. And he's either going to figure that out or not at this point.
Yeah. I mean, I think for the Zadina contract's a perfect flyer for the Sharks. 1 year, $1.1 million. If he works out, great. You have a 24-year-old asset who's an RFA, and you can figure things out from there. And if he doesn't, you took a shot on a guy, and you got plenty of prospects who are going to start to kind of infiltrate the system here soon. So, yeah, it's gonna be a long season for me, isn't it, Corey?
Yeah, like I don't know. I'm a Hurricanes fan. We've had a lot of seasons like this, and there are things we do to get through the season. Like I remember one year they had all these like food giveaways, and they score like 3 goals, you get free pizza.
Oh, we had the 4 in the net tacos you get. Yeah, 4 in the net. I hope they bring back the 4 in the net tacos you get for the Sharks. But
like there's always a lot of that. But if like it's always a little better if somebody like Eklund gets called up, and that's somebody you can like look forward to seeing every night.
Yes.
Like for us, like when it was like when Aho was here in his first year, that was a big deal. And we also got Teravainen in that first year too. So it was like, oh, we can kind of see something here. But yeah, I don't know. It's like I look at this roster, it kind of reminds me a lot of like the Montreal's last year. And Montreal, for as bad as they were, like their fans on Twitter seemed like they were having like a blast watching all these games. So I don't know, maybe they can. It's just kind of having fun, like watching the games, really, like despite the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, that was the great thing about last year with Erik Karlsson, right? Was any given night you could have Erik Karlsson just do something special, like, oh, I'm just going to score a hat trick tonight, or I'm going to put up 5 points and make this team at least watchable at times. And yeah, this season going to be a lot of Macklin Celebrini highlights to kind of get me through the season, because I think it's going to be a very long season. Corey, thank you so much for your time. Where can the people find you? Where can they support you and all your awesome work that you do?
So the general hub for all my stuff is AllThreeZones.com. Like there's a link to my Substack where you can read my Defenseman Compass articles there. There's a link to my Patreon if you want to support the AllThreeZones project. And gain access to all these stats that I'm tracking, and you can learn a lot more about them. And I'm about to have a baby in a couple of days potentially. So I don't know how much new content I'll be able to put out, but I'll still be alive is what I'll say.
Babies sleep a lot the first like 6 months. I tell you, it's no, I'm kidding. They're alive. Time goes fast though. My oldest is about to turn 10 in like 2 weeks. I can't believe I remember the day he was born, and now he's almost 10, and he's 10 going on 15, because the attitude is just something else. So
yeah, I'm not planning to do much in these next couple of I want to say weeks, but I know it's going to be months. But basically what I've done is I create a lot of content so people can have just a whole archive of stuff to look forward to while I try to get any sleep over the next couple of months and just spend as much time as possible with our new daughter.
It's so much fun. It goes by so fast. So Corey, thank you so much. We'll try to have you on sometime during the season where we can see how the Sharks roster is falling apart quickly, and check in on the daughter, the soon to be daughter. So thanks, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, guys, hope you enjoyed my conversation with Corey. Hopefully, I mean, by the time this out, he could be having a kid. So hopefully everything's going well there. Fingers crossed. But big thing, though, is I think the loss of Erik Karlsson, what is going to do to the dynamic of the Sharks team. And just as simple as getting the puck from their defensive zone to the offensive zone, I think is going to be a slog at times for them. So guys like Barabanov, guys like Eklund, those guys who can transition are going to be key members of this team, and keeping those guys healthy throughout the season is going to be huge, because again, you don't have Erik Karlsson, who is an absolute transition monster there, and none of the defensemen right now look like those type of guys. So we'll see what happens if this kind of what this makes the Sharks this year. I have a feeling it's going to make them a slog to watch at times, because it's probably going to be a lot of dump and chase and then reset type of hockey, unfortunately. So again, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to do the state of the franchise of the Ducks. We're almost done with that, and then we have the Golden Knights coming up as well. But so make sure you guys are following along wherever you get podcasts, and of course you can watch on YouTube as well. You can follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads at Locked On Sharks. You can follow me on Twitter and Threads at My Fry Hole. And until tomorrow, bye, friends.